board. Okay, so just a couple things tonight. It won't be too long of a class. We'll look at Visual Studio stuff here in a moment. We looked at some of the basic syntax for language the other day, and I wanted to look at some of the other widgets that are on there and talk about those, see the options that are available. But before that, is a little spiel that I like to give in every class I teach. Because if you're in this class, that means you're making plans to get an IT job, basically a desk job, right? You're making plans to sit at a desk and make lots of money, typing away on a computer. And this stuff is, that is bad for our bodies in a number of ways. The human body is supposed to be a dynamic thing. When we sitting at a desk all the time, 40 hours a week, a full-time job, it kind of damages the body. So I always like to take a moment and address that in all my classes. I believe 2 of the students in this class on the roster here have heard this before, and kind of the same thing. Well, we can start with that little gesture I just made, the typing gesture to signify just for that, because the flat keyboard is a terrible, terrible shape for human body. Probably heard of carpal tunnel. Well, we usually refer to the problems with it by that name. Carpal tunnel is just the tube that all the nerves in your hand go through on the way through, the tube that holds all the nerves from your hand. But when that tube gets damaged, my understanding of it is damage on that tube, your brain constantly receives a pain signal from your hand. Sounds terribly unpleasant. And keyboards are really bad about causing that damage if we're not careful. We can improve it a little with form. The little things that raise your arm up so you're coming in at a better angle. Oh, those lights are shining right on it. I can make them not quite so direct there, but raise your arm up and you're coming in at a better angle can really help to delay that, which is also like a nice soft arm rest while you're working on a keyboard. That can help. And for those who ever had like piano lessons, ideally you want to push the keyboard the same way as like you would a piano. Make sure you're pushing down with your fingers, not like curled and pushing downward, not just swiping down. That can kind of prevent some damage. Or these things right here. This is a terrible shape for our hands. It's like, well, what I'm doing right here, in order to hold this and point it out, I cannot hold it in the same way that I use it. This was just a convenience factor. So I'll start there. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen. Because back in the 60s, the engineer that invented that, he had the idea for what it was going to do and how the inside parts were going to work. And he just didn't think he didn't put a whole lot of thought into the casing at first. And then when he suddenly needed a case, he had a little wooden box in his office that was about the size of his hand and would hold all the components for it. So that's where that shape came from. So yeah, here's the very original one. It was just a size big enough for his hand. So, and it hasn't really changed. Like I was just pointing out, we can't hold this and use it from the same hand positions. And it's not a very good shape. So there are better shapes of mouse that won't cause damage to our arms just by using them. And you just want to keep some of this in mind for, if you're planning on working in IT and have basically a desk job working 40 hours a week, sitting at a desk is bad for the human body. Like, it's not obviously dangerous like some jobs. Construction's a big one that springs to mind. Doing random labor on construction sites, I received a number of injuries myself, but all the nails, heavy stuff falling, all sorts of things that can happen there is just more like wounds. But I'm trying to get to the point about like long-term damage. As even though a construction worker is going to get a lot of those little injuries along the way, those day-to-day things, and sometimes there's bad things that can happen. I had a cousin that was a roofer for many, many, many years, but he fell off a 2-story house and shattered both his ankles, so he's not a roofer anymore. That sort of thing doesn't happen. That sort of thing doesn't happen at a desk job. Yeah.
God, I hope not.
Yeah. At a desk, we don't have to worry about that. But people that work those jobs like construction, they're gonna be out there moving, and their bodies are very dynamic. So by the time we reach old age, 65, 70 years old, their bodies are actually going to be in much better shape because they've been used. If sitting at a desk is just really, really bad for the human body. Not something we're meant to do. And there's this field you've probably heard it mentioned, ergonomics. I'm going to start with the Wikipedia page. This picture's been on here for like 10 years. So human factors and ergonomics. You've probably heard the term and heard the word in terms of it boosts productivity, but it does so because it's better for our bodies. So some of the things you want to keep in mind, I just wanted to point at this picture right here. This one over here, the proper positioning. And there's some better things here, like it's not the best, most ideal picture, but the angle you're looking at, how you hold your arms, that sort of stuff, slouching over in a desk for 40 hours a week for 20 years is going to cause some serious back problems. Comfortable chairs, some of the positioning things, I just kind of wanted to point at that. Oh, there's Jerry. I hit admit, did that let him in? Okay. Hi, Jerry. We were just getting started here talking about, well, this little spiel I always give. If you're in this class, you're planning on working IT, probably a desk job, which is very, very bad for the body. So human bodies should be dynamic, and sitting at a desk does bad things to them. That does bad things to our bodies over time. So, well, like I started out mentioning keyboard. There's a few things we can do. This nice, this flat shape, basic shape on a keyboard, the flat thing. Not the best shape, but we can get things like armrests that lift our arms up, and they're usually comfortable, which give us a better angle, force us to move our fingers at angles more like what a piano teacher would require of students if you've ever had piano lessons. But that's not our only option. And if you're going to have a job where you're at a keyboard for a full-time job, you might want to keep some of the better options in mind. So you can just search for ergonomic keyboard. Keyboard. There's a few different names for them, and there's much better shapes than these. I'm just going to pull up the images. So while that's pulling up, if we just hold your arms out and relax them, they kind of turn like this, right? They don't sit flat like we would do on a keyboard. Our relaxed position is kind of like this. So ideally, that is the, if we're going to be sitting at a desk, that is the position we want our hands in. And the more we can get to that, the better it would be. So some of these, you see they kind of split them. This one you can kind of see it splits it and turns it up a little so that we're not at that flat state, that flat position. We're closer to the relaxed position. Or these can be really nice, the split keyboards, and then you can set each one up at the perfect spot for your left and right arm respectively. But something that bends up in the middle, that can make a big difference. Or something like this, it looks like it folds up and it has that pause position, which would be better for the hands. Different types of split ones. Or this one, I always like to point out, that one looks kind of funky, right? And this one was not something put together by an artist. This is what a team of hand doctors, what's the word for that? Is it, I'm drawing a blank on the word. It starts with an O, I think.
Or ortho, oh my God. Bone doctor?
Yeah. I'll say hand doctors. Yeah. Orthopedics. No, that's not it.
It's something like
One
that.
of those, yeah, one of those big words. It starts with an O, but the hand doctors. A team of them did a lot of research, and this is what the shape they came up with. They said is best for the human body. That's the best thing for our fingers.
Weird. It's just circles.
Yeah, that one's quite a bit different. So that that might be a bit extreme, but things that bend up. The split keyboards are really nice. There was another picture I was looking for in particular. Maybe it's up here. They've been kind of popular lately. There's some where it's like straight vertical, and we're just like your arms would be in a chair, and you're typing this way instead of this way. This one kind of gets there. You see how there's a real nice shape that would follow just the relaxed position of the hands. And that's the sort of thing you want to look for. Or something like this, where it splits it up. A lot of those aren't necessarily random, they're not random works of art. That's what research produced as far as what's good for our bodies. There's one of the straight vertical ones. Yeah, so you're actually typing like this, which is a better position for the body. But I just wanted to point at these things and keep that in mind. I've heard carpal tunnel is awful. Carpal tunnel syndrome. Carpal tunnel is the tube every nerve in your hand runs through to get back to your brain. And if it gets damaged, your brain just constantly receives a pain signal. I've heard it's a very unpleasant thing to deal with. So anything, and that's the sort of stuff we have to worry about with IT. The long-term damage from not using our bodies enough or using our bodies in poor format. So if you're going to be at a keyboard for a while, making good IT money, it might be worth it to go ahead and invest in a really nice keyboard, a high-quality keyboard that's going to last and not damage your body. And a similar thing with a mouse. I think I talked about this right before you came in, Terry. This is a terrible shape. Notice that in order to hold it and to use it, I cannot have my hand in the same posture. This shape came about because the engineer just needed something. I just searched for it. I'll pull it. While I'm talking about it again, might as well pull that picture back up. The engineer had the idea for the internal stuff and how it was going to work. And then he just needed someplace to put it. And he had a little wooden box in his office that was the size of his hand. So he didn't put any thought into that shape, and it just kind of stuck around. But just like those keyboards we just looked at, proper research has been done into what is best for the human hand. Vertical mouse are the best ones for using long-term usage. So where we hold it like that. So you can see it's that relaxed position of the hand. We're using, like, the way our arm tries to go, if we just completely relax our muscles, wrap it around the mouse that way, and then it's not going to do as much damage over time. You can see some of those aren't not too bad of a price. I'm sure the more expensive ones are a whole lot more comfortable to work with and whatnot. But if you're making good IT money, it's not that bad. Trackball mouses can be really nice too. Have you all ever used a trackball mouse?
Yeah, I hate it. I can't stand them.
It takes some getting used to, that's for sure. But the sort of thing where your hand, the mouse doesn't move, so your hand just stops, and the only thing moving is your thumb and then the clicking. So we aren't doing stuff with our arm in a weird position. So the thumb can move all day long. It's a highly it's a very, very versatile toy. It takes a lot to wear out the thumb. Like you can, if you just feel those joints there compared to how your other fingers attach, you can tell there's a big difference in your thumb. It goes all the way back. It connects to the wrist, not to something way up here. the mobility, the whole mobility of the thumb comes from back here. You can just kind of feel that on your hand. So our thumb can move for a whole lot longer. So trackball mouses are good too, but it takes some getting used to because the mouse doesn't move. It holds still, and then you just move your thumb to control stuff. The vertical mouse is the kind of the best shape. And along with that, the mouse and the keyboard is where we're sitting at. This has become a big deal lately. The gaming chairs, right? Kind of like what I'm sitting in here is a guitar stool, guitar playing stool. It's specifically designed, has a footrest that sits really high and is very stiff because that's the position to be in order to play in guitar position. But a very stiff chair has limited uses, right? Like gaming chairs. Have y'all seen those? Or
yeah, I have one, actually. So.
Yeah, it makes a big difference when the chair moves with you. You move around and don't lose the support. Like if I shuffle around here in this stiff chair, there's only a couple of positions where my body is still supported. But the gaming chair moves with you. There's a lot of things like that. Y'all know what the best position for the human body to work in is? Because again, the old school things where not a lot of thought was put into it. The desk, they just set up, that big flat surface so we could sit in a stiff chair beside it and have something to write on. But once proper research was done, even before the proper research, people noticed that sitting at a desk like that was kind of rough on the body. The human body should be out moving. And people that move a lot, as they got old, their bodies were in a lot better shape. But do you know what the best position for humans to work in is?
Straight back, lean back, one of those?
Yeah, zero gravity. There's something they started putting in cars that they call zero gravity. But this is a zero gravity position. So I don't know what they're putting what they're calling that in the cars, because you could not drive a car like that. But this position, everything's leaned back. It's a very dynamic, mobile chair. It's not stiff. You can move with it. Some of these things, like you can get some of this stuff and have the split keyboards, put a keyboard in each armrest and have good positions. Things like this. It's just a better position to work for. Or the Scorpion chairs. These things are awesome. Like all of that back end is automated. So when you sit down in the chair, that like motors pull all the screens out in front of you and stuff. That one's not cheap. Something like this wouldn't be quite as expensive. But again, they're not cheap, but like some of the chairs and just like little attachments to lock a laptop in place, like what's in this picture, can make a big difference if you're going to be working in IT for a long period of time. And if you're making good money, then it will, in the long run, it would probably be worth it to look into some of this stuff. I guess you can think of it as the right tools for the right job. You're not just like a hobbyist messing around with computers. You're here to actually be a professional with it. So you want to make sure you have the right tools, and that includes working from the right position and things like that. Let's see, I think that's the ones I usually go over. You can look for that. It's a zero gravity workstations. That's that best position. They also have chairs, and you might have to filter the searches some because car makers have started calling something zero gravity. But this is zero gravity position. And there's no way you could have that in a car. So I don't know what they're referring to in a car. Yeah, like some of these chairs probably aren't too expensive, and you could get a little thing to latch a laptop on and secure it in place and have that better position to work from right off the bat. But just the right tools for the right job, especially the keyboards, because keyboards are notorious about damaging our bodies. It damages basically the whole arm, eventually causes carpal tunnel syndrome. And I've heard that is terribly unpleasant. It's like just your brain constantly receives a pain signal from your hand, which makes it hard to do anything. Kind of like arthritis, only with arthritis, your fingers lock up and stuff. So there's a reason for not being able to do anything. The carpal tunnel is just kind of everything you try to do hurts. And yeah, over the long run, somebody that works in the construction industry is going to have a lot more injuries because there's more, sharp nails, broken glass, and heavy items on a construction site than in the typical office cubicle. But when we reach old age, somebody that's spent a working career on a construction site is going to be in way better shape because their body, they've moved the whole time. They've used their body. It didn't go stiff from lack of usage. But I always want to give that speech in pretty much every class I teach, just to remind you all about it. If you're in this class, it's because you're planning on spending your working career at a desk, at a computer. Maybe network people, you might be running around the office, but you're still going to be spending a whole lot of time at the computer monitoring that network. And the human body is a dynamic thing. It does not do well when you're sitting at a desk for a long time. Which I guess is another thing to mention. Obviously there's other things like gym memberships and hobbies that would be active. Just keep those things in mind, because if you're going to spend a whole lot of time sitting at a desk working, it does long-term damage to your body. That's definitely long-term damage, and little things like those keyboards can make a big difference. But any questions about that? That's just, I was just pointing you in that direction. Keep that stuff in mind. Because obviously the job can be done from a cheap keyboard, right? It's just a good keyboard that's not going to damage your body would surely pay off in the long run. So otherwise, I wanted to look at a few more things on Visual Studio. And it'll probably be kind of a quick night, because at this point in the semester, this is a very active subject. We learn by doing, and we've seen a lot of the core concepts. So now that we've seen those core concepts, you want to take time to apply them and do stuff. Make little apps. Like here in Visual Studio, just play around and make some stuff, and that's the way to learn it. Just start doing it, really. So the other day we looked at some of the core syntax. Oh, whoops! I grabbed the wrong mouse. I have to grab my mouse pad. Sorry. I grabbed the high-speed mouse, and y'all are probably familiar with it. High-speed mouse on any surface other than the mouse pad it's meant to go on is just going to be jumpy and almost unpredictable at times. That's a little bit better. So I'm going to jump on, I think I was on number 3 the other day. I hope so, because if I jump on a different one, I probably have to go through the whole set up an office account or confirm an office account, even though I already have one, all that. When we looked at some of the basic syntax, though, that's all the background stuff, right? We've been looking at background stuff all semester. We know how selection structures go together, and we know how loops go together, and we know how to make those pieces interact to get stuff to happen. Obviously, it takes practice afterwards. So that's why with the software development classes, I always like to front load them. We cover a lot of that material, do tons of talking at the beginning. So here, when we get to week 7 and 8, it'll be short. We can do short lectures and then spend that amount of time doing stuff, practicing. Because like most things, it gets better with practice. Whoops. I had the same password on the lab computers for like 2.5 years, and suddenly had to change it last year or last semester, the first 8-week term. So I guess this semester still. And I keep trying to type in the old password. Somewhere is Visual, there it is. So on the school, it's Visual Studio 2015. Oh, no, there. Which version did you all download?
I believe we get the 2015 community, right?
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Yeah, they only update it every couple of years. As you know, it's or as you've noticed, it's very big software. Why is the voice recorder on? I don't need that. I am recording the meeting, right? Okay, good. Also, today I was covering one of Lloyd's classes, and I finally found the pause button for the videos, so I don't have to stop it and send out 2 different videos. I'm not a big fan of the way Zoom has those hidden buttons that you only see the button when you put your mouse over the spot where it's going to be. It's like a trick. It seems there's something. But I finally found that pause button, so I don't have to actually stop the recording and then start another one. Unless I was just on her meeting and she had just something set up for it. I'll have to look here in a while. Close the start page. You don't need to see that stuff. So like we saw the other day, well, I guess I need to wait for that thing to stop spinning. I'm going to point at that first button again. Actually, I should probably expand this and look at the bigger version. Can you all see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So remember, as you're playing around with things, if you lose track of windows, under the window tab, which something's going really slowly here. I think it's still opening on that end. Uh-oh. What if I click somewhere else? So, okay. Yeah, that's Visual Studio. It's really big software. This is why I often prefer text editors. I assume this button will. Did it just freeze up? Nope, there it goes. Okay. Might as well leave that open though. So as you're messing around with it, if you lose track of your windows, remember you can always go to Window and reset there's a reset button right here to get back to the default view. You can also save layouts when you're happy with one. That way you don't have to go all the way back to the default. If you get things set up the way you like them, go ahead and save the layout. And that way, if you lose track of things, you can just come back to that save layout. And the different panels you have, you can pull up here. But for remember we always want to do a new project. And have a lot of choices of languages. So C# and Visual Basic, Microsoft's proprietary languages were probably the two, were definitely installed on there. We might see some other ones like here in School Computers. We have F# and SQL Server. There's Python, which you're probably a little bit more familiar with. You can mess around with that. And more languages are available. You can install from that installer software that you had to download in order to put it on your computer. You can find more of those. WPF is a bigger, newer library. It has more stuff. It's a little bit harder to work with, but it has a few more things. For us now, and for just getting started off, you probably want a Windows form application, which we can do in other languages. So if I go to, oh, Python's not there. I thought it would have Windows forms for Python as well. I've seen that before, but maybe people just had to plug in. If you go to Visual Basic and Windows form application, then you just want to make sure and give it a name and location before you save it, because remember, there's going to be a lot of files, and including a lot of auto-generated files, which makes renaming things kind of a headache. Makes it a chore to rename things. Class example 2, and I'll just save it in my documents. Okay. Try to remember where I saved it and get these pictures out of the way. Control, that's a smaller library that's easier to work with. The WPF is like the upgrade on it, so we can get more control over those things. And as far as like trying to start out quickly, for quickly starting out, that control slows everything down. So we can't get things together as a simple form together as quickly as what we can with the Windows form. So it opens up, gives us our little window here. And let's see, I'm just going to use a text box for output tonight. And then we'll look at some of the other widgets. So I'll bring in a text box. And the first thing we always want to do is give it a name. The name we're going to refer to it in the code. So if you put it in alphabetical order, it'll be right near the top because it's the name in parentheses. This is what we refer to it as the code. I find it a whole lot easier to work with these things categorized. That way I can think about the category I need. You know, is it appearance stuff, behavior stuff? And in that case, name is down under design. So as soon as you put something on the form, if you plan on referring to it in the code, you might want to, it's a good idea to go ahead and give it a name. And the convention I go with, anything that shows on the screen, if it's going to show, if the user will see it, I give it Hungarian notation. And if it's variables, I put in camel case, and then methods and objects, I put in Pascal case. And that way I can keep reusing the same words. Like if there's a meaningful word like output, have the text box, whoops. I did not mean to, oh yeah, because I'm zoomed in on the screen. Where'd my mouse go? I did not mean to move that over where I wouldn't be able to see it. There we go. Yeah, so that way meaningful words or useful names like output can be used over and over again. So TXT for text box output, or if there's also a list box output, you could have LST output, and then they're completely different things. And then the scripting side can use output for a variable name, put in camel case, and then maybe a method called output wrote in Pascal case, which would have a capital O at the beginning. And we're using that same name to help keep track of what it is in a bunch of different places, depending on how we spell it. For tonight, I just wanted to look at a few of the forms we have on here. I'll just do a text box for output, kind of see what's there, and maybe, well, probably need a button to make something happen. So I'll drag a button in, and yeah, I'll go ahead and refer to it. It's like button, clicker, I don't know. There's only one on the screen, so I'll just put something like that. And then up in the appearance thing attribute, we can make some changes. Like we could set the color of the button. So foreground would be the text that shows on it. We could change that color. Oh, I have to scroll over. And from the drop-down list, you can make it kind of look any way, however you want it to look. I thought that might bring up the little predictive thing. The web tab here has the longest list, all of the named colors, which if you're not familiar with it, the named colors will look different machine to machine. So if colors match by name, so like cornflower blue, that light blue color, what's something that matches it? I'm not good at matching colors. Maybe matches forest green. You want that sort of contrast between them. The matching between the named colors will be consistent machine to machine, but the image itself, the color itself won't be quite as consistent. You can just kind of choose different colors for it. So like put a blue foreground, different background, set a different background color or background image. I'll set a background color for this one. Oops. There's a slight delay, which keeps throwing me off. So maybe, I don't know. That's not very good. Maybe a dark green. Well, that's still showing. Yeah, some like make it in green with blue letters. We have all sorts of different things. We can choose a background image for it if you want to. We have a search bar here. If you need an image, you'll want to download it into the resources. You have to import it. If I do this, I can only see this PC, so I have to download something first. Bing. I don't know where Google Chrome's at. Is it done moving on me? Okay. Pictures of beach. I doubt there's too many. I doubt there's very many pictures on this computer. But I assume you all know how to download an image, right? We can right click on it, save image as, stick it somewhere on this computer. I'll just put it in downloads, call it beach, and get Bing out of the way. Close this. And in order to get it, to bring an image in to work with it, we have to import it into our Visual Studio project as to be brought in and put in the right place in all those folders. So you want to go downloads or wherever you found it. And whenever you bring it in, you can just hit OK, and it should load right into the form. Which taking me, yeah. So you can kind of customize the appearance, make it look however you want it to look, things like that. Have the little output. That button's kind of hidden there. Maybe make that bigger. So we can go through, dig through the properties here and find things about the size. Well, there's ways to type in the size. We have little handles, so we can also just drag it and make it bigger. And again, change the text that shows on it. So name is what we call it in the code, and text is what shows on it. All right, do stuff. There we go. The button's going to do stuff. Because the main thing I wanted to look at tonight, we saw both of those the other day. But we have a whole lot of different things we can use. So like a checkbox. Once again, when we bring it in, we'll make sure and give it a name. Hungarian notation, we put CHK for check. I'll just put box. So it's still checkbox. And then we can refer to that in the code. So I'll go over to the button thing. So I'm gonna add some white space. Spread these things, spread the words out a little. So we can make a reference to that checkbox variable or use the dot stuff to just refer to it. So if we start typing that, so a checkbox, that's going to return true or false, right? If it's checked, it's true. Hopefully you all were able to predict that, even though you've probably haven't worked with checkboxes before. But checking the box is true, not checking the box is false. So that's our GUI version of a Boolean, is a checkbox. Or a radio button, but radio buttons take a little bit more work to get going, because radio buttons are more of a one or the other. A checkbox is like a Boolean. We set something up to be true or false. So we can check that in an if statement. So if checkbox dot checked. So that's the condition we can check. So if it's checked, then we can print something. So like txt output dot, it's just a text box this time. The other day we were doing output list box. I'm just using not tab index. I'm just using a regular text box. So we'll have the text attribute. So you do have to be careful for that. You know, we can use different things for inputs and outputs, and you just have to choose the one you want. But again, that's why the lecture tonight is going to be kind of brief. That way you all can just go in here and click around on these things. And when you type in a new one, so we know we have this text output box. If we hit dot, we can start seeing things about it. It's going to assume text is the first one we want. But notice that text has the little wrench icon beside it. So different things like text. So text with that wrench icon, we know we can assign text a value to that text attribute. So that kind of gives us a good hint of what that wrench icon is representing. Those are the things that we can reassign. The text alignment, the length of the text. As we scroll through here, we'll see a lot of different stuff. I use password character, that way it's the text that the user types in is hidden and encrypted, so it's not easily grabbed. Is it visible or not? Width for the size of it. Ours is just one line long. We could set word wrap to bring that around. I'm just going to set text, but you can scroll through that list, and you know the thing that you know is going to be there, like start with the text and text box. Well, that has the wrench icon. So as we scroll through this list, that kind of indicates to us that things like the wrench icon is stuff we can reassign. Whereas that other icon we keep seeing looks like a little cube here. That might mean something different. And as we look at it, like refresh. So that's not really a reassignment. That sounds more like something it's going to do, right? It's going to reset itself. And so that's what that is what that icon means. Reset text. We can go back to the default text. That is definitely a Zoom thing. Resume our original layout. So that's what those little icons mean. And you can kind of scroll through the list and get familiar with what each one does. For the example here, I'm just going to put some text there. So if the checkbox is checked, then the box is checked. Not doing anything creative or fancy here, just some simplest case example. Otherwise, if it's not, then we'll say text output.text. We'll say it's not checked. Change it up a little. You forgot to check the box. An overly simplified version of something we've seen, right? Usually the do you agree to the user agreement term, to the user terms, agreement terms, however it's worded. Big long legal wording for that, but we have to click the checkbox, and if we don't click the checkbox, we'll get a message that says, well, you can't move on to the next step then to install the software or whatever. Then we can hit save all. I don't know why my cursor's doing that. Remember to save all, because there's lots and lots and lots of files involved here, so we want to make sure they're all saved before hitting run. And the first run always takes longest. Yes, we have our checkbox. So if I check it, it should be true now. So when I hit do stuff, we get that message, the box is checked. If I uncheck it and click the button, you forgot to check. So a checkbox is the GUI, graphical user interface, GUI. We typically just say GUI. A checkbox is the GUI version of a Boolean. If you need to check some yes or no things, use a checkbox. So I'll comment those out. Control case C. What's another good form? Well, I started pointing at that text box, so I might as well point at one. It's not here under, oh, it is under common. A text box is kind of lousy, right? There's very limited things we can do with that. If I go over here, notice the expansion, the size changing ones only have the left and right. It doesn't give me an up and down size changing. So we have bigger text boxes. In particular, this one down here is kind of nice, the rich text box. So this has a lot more formatting options. Are you all familiar with like a rich text file?
No, I'm not.
Is that just with formatting or something, styling?
Yeah, that's like the most basic. So rich text. Let me get back to my stuff. So Notepad++ is rich text, whereas regular Notepad would be text. That's the best example I can think of. And in Notepad++, we have lots of different colors, right? In particular, this one's set up for languages, so we can choose what language we're going to work with, right? If we want to type in Python, it's going to get some color choice. It's going to change colors. Define thing. X is true. Return string. We get that color changing, right? Whereas here in regular Notepad, it's black and white. We could change the color of the font, or we could change the size of the font, but that's about it. Like here's all the options for formatting we have in regular text. We can change what font it is and how big that font is. But in rich text, we have a whole lot more options. Or here we could choose a different language and go to, say we're typing in, well, VB. The other one we're using right here. And then it's going to recognize a different set of words, right? If I type dim, it changes colors. But if I type def, which is a Python keyword, it's not going to change colors. So it's the formatting is rich text. We can color things up, underline them, and we have a lot more options. So that is just a regular rich text box. And yeah, then I would recommend using the IntelliSense to see some of what you can do with it. But to put text in, it's going to be the same because it is still a text box. So we would just call up our reference name and then say .txt and reassign that attribute. Let's see, checkboxes or Booleans. A checked list box, that can be useful, right? We saw a list box the other day, and we saw an array. So we can read the items from a list into an array, and then have a whole bunch of these user options to choose from. Right? Add like 15 or 20 different options and let the user choose which ones they want. And then it's when we get onto the other side in the scripting, it's just a true or false value. So it's essentially the same as if we would have put 10 or 15 on these at once, except a list box is kind of designed to go into a list or an array. So we can put a whole bunch of checkboxes together that way and bring the value back, and it'll return the list. Actually, if I type that in the code, check list box 1. So I'll go over here and pull up that whoops. I was trying to keep that in there. So if I call that thing, oh, there it goes. Check list box 1 dot. So obviously, scroll down a little. We're gonna have text values. Where's T? Somewhere in here, there's a way to get it right to an array. But those have items. It's a list box, so like a list will have items somewhere. Items, there it is. So items dot add contains. You copy it to a list. That's probably what you would want to do. Copy to, and then put it in some list. You can count them, how many are there, the type of them, a bunch of things like that. We can kind of use the IntelliSense to see what you have about different items. For starting out though, it's probably just 1 or 2 checkboxes at a time. And remember, that's going to be your true false value. So date time picker, those are useful, right? Drag that over here, click it somewhere. And see, by default, it gives today's date. I'm putting something easier to type on there. So DT input. So for Hungarian notation, DT for date time, and then input. So when we get back over to the code, we can, again, use the IntelliSense to see what values we would have from that. So DT input, obviously there's some text there. Surely there's a date, right? DT date bindings. I don't see a date, maybe a value. And sometimes it just takes a little going back and forth. Oh, there's a value. So I bet they put a value there. And that box has a calendar, so then that means we probably want to assign that somewhere. So, well, I'll put it to the output. txt output dot text is going to be that whatever the value in that date time input is. And see how I'm just kind of using that list to see what's available. It's almost like the language tells you how to use it. Because if it's something that doesn't make any sense, it's going to underline it in red too. But that little predictive box, you can kind of scroll through that. So if I click do stuff right off the bat, 12/9/2020, we see today's date. It's not wide enough. 6:56 and 36 seconds in the evening. We can click any date. I'll scroll up a couple months, click a random date, do stuff. April 21st, 2021. It still put the same hours in, but we can get the date right from the box and have a spot where the user can enter a date. Maybe you're writing things to files or making a scheduler issue or something. There's lots of different things. And that's kind of what you're going to do. Just mess around with it. Right? Well, maybe one example, we're coming on finals next week. Right? Maybe make a form that will organize your study schedule over the next week as you get ready for finals. And that would be really good practice. So you'd want something like a date picker. And you could set the date and time on that and have it print out what time you should be working on stuff, just for practice with these things. Or there's refined versions, just like we saw list box and checkboxes combined into a checklist box. I guess a date time picker is actually a combination of a month calendar, and there's probably a time thing down here somewhere. I don't see it in this box, but I'm in the common controls. Up here we have even more under all forms. Things for the background, different bindings, buttons, checkboxes, color pickers. That can be nice. Let's drag one of those over. I thought I drag it over. Where'd it go? Maybe I didn't drag it. Color dialog, I'll put that there. Well, I'm not sure why that's not letting me put that there. It's not giving me any sort of message or anything, is it? No. For some reason, it doesn't want to put a color dialog. But that's very similar. We just have to create a graphics object as well. But you could set up some sort of color picker and change the colors on your forms. Right? So we can access that button because it has a name. We can access the form itself because it has a name. The checkbox, the date picker, the dialog. Bring in a color dialog and then pick a color from that and use that to adjust the form as you're making it. Data grid view. Yeah, I just went up here to point out that there's a lot more available. I should probably stick with the for starting with, stick with the common ones. So we have list box, a list view. It's going to look a lot like a list box. The difference being we can't select from the list view. All we can do is look at it. And a list box, we can click on things and make stuff happen. We want to bring in a list box and point out that one, because maybe you want that for an input. A list box, we were using these for output the other day. If I come over here, that's probably still called list box 1. Yeah. List box 1 dot items, because we're usually doing that one at a time, or select. Notice we have selected. So the index is the selected thing or the selected item. So if we have a bunch of stuff in that list, then we can grab the selected. We can let the user select an item, which means double click on it. Y'all have seen that on GUIs, I'm sure. as common as computers are, and then we could assign that to something else. I guess I could try to write something really quick that would, before I do that, I have to put something in there. So list.items.add. First thing, wait for the intelligence to catch up with me. That's why I like text editors. There it goes. List box 1.items.add. Second thing, just to have something there. Then our txt output dot text value is going to equal the list box 1 dot selected items. Actually, that might be enough. We're just going to take whatever item gets selected, throw it right back to the inbox. Might need something else here. Give that a run. Click this, and we have first and second. So if we select first and hit do stuff, you can see it pops right down in there. So that list probably should have been populated before running the program, but I think you kind of get the idea there. If the second item is selected, when I click the button, we can do stuff with that selected item. That will probably be a very useful one. And yeah, just play around with stuff. Yeah, a list box and a date picker and checkbox, that would probably work to put like a study schedule thing together this evening. Or a checklist box thing, you can put together a to-do list, and when you check the box, it periodically updates and removes all of the checked things. That wouldn't be very hard to put together. A picture, and obviously we need to do the same thing. We would need to set up resources for it. Notice when I drag the picture box in, what I was going to point to is there's this little arrow up here in the corner of it. If we click on that arrow, there's options for like choosing the image. And we get back to that box that had the import button. So we have to import any pictures we want to use into our project first. But at that point, then we could reuse them the same way. Kind of use the IntelliSense to see what attributes are there and what's available. Radio buttons, I'm sure you've seen those. Those are a little more complicated to get working. You could use it like a checkbox at this point, but in order to do the one or the other selection, it's a little more complicated. So maybe skip that or just use it as a round checkbox at this point. You have to do some extra stuff to link all the radio buttons together just to make sure that only one can be selected, which is really just a selection structure. It's just kind of a long selection structure linking them all together. Progress bars, those can be useful. That study to-do list thing I mentioned with the date picker and a checked list box, as you check off different things, just have the progress bar update to a certain percentage and kind of see what's going on with that. And a lot of them we refer to them in the same way. Well, I'm going to do that. I'll bring that back in. So we have this progress bar here. So I'm going to give a better name to PR. I'm going to call it PRB, just a nice short name. Pretty much all prefix there. I just want to refer to it in the code. Oh, and so far we've seen double clicking on the button. If I double click on this, notice we get something that happens when we click on the progress bar and could write code there. So we typically set stuff up on buttons, at least to begin with, but we can click on anything and kind of set it the same way. Just double click on it, and then Visual Studio will automatically generate the the click event for that item. Comment that out. And we have that progress bar, so PRB. And just to see what's on here, we can hit dot. And right off of that, we see value. Well, a progress bar is showing progress. So let's put it at 50 or something. Oh, I gotta wait on the IntelliSense again. There it is. So I'll put a 50 in there, see what it looks like. And that's what you want to do to figure this stuff out. Just try things. Give it a try, see what happens. Come back, change things. Try something different. That's the best way to figure it out. So if I click the do stuff, you see that progress bar filled up to 50%. And well, now it looks like it's frozen up because it's trying to get up to 100%. But it just, there's no reassignment, but we can do different things. Keep track of the progress on like a to-do list. And every time that an item gets checked off the to-do list, the progress bar moves a little further along. For just a suggestion that wouldn't be too bad to code up. It would just take a couple if statements, right? And we can check those checkboxes directly because a checkbox is a Boolean. So we can throw that right in an if statement. And depending on how many of them are checked, you know, like every time one's checked, we add 10 to a variable. And then our progress bar shows what that variable is up to. So it wouldn't take a whole lot to get that together just to try things out with. Tooltip. I'll bring this in. This one I clicked, that one, it kind of needs to go with something. It didn't show up on an image or anything. So if I bring the tooltip over the button, we have a name so we can refer to it. Well, I'm going to treat it like a label and just change the appearance on it. And if we look, instead, if we were looking through that, you can do the same thing here. So we can see the different properties. Active, I might click display. Four colors. I was looking for a text attribute, but I don't see a text attribute. Maybe that's under title. Let me run this and see what happens. That's the little hover over things. Well, like what's going on right here. When I hover over the save all button, it tells me it's save all. That's a tooltip. So I attach one to the button. So when I hover over the button, it should show something. Yeah, I don't see anything. So there must be a text attribute somewhere that I'm just overlooking. Behavior, data. Is there another scroll bar over here I don't see? No, I'm all the way at the top. Data, name, modifiers. Maybe it's under title. Animation, fading. We'll try that. And still don't see anything. So another thing you want to do is you can check, just check Google for anything you get stuck on. So like how to apply a tooltip to a button in Visual Studio. Add a tooltip, add a button to your form, select the button, go to properties, scroll down until you see tooltip on the name of your tool? Add some text and that's it. Oh, so I was looking at the tooltip form, but apparently I need to put that on the button. So come back over here, and I had to move the pictures back in the way. So if I select the button, and somewhere here there should be a tooltip option. And if you're specific about the things you look for in Google, you'll get those right on it. Okay, so tooltip. I brought in 3 of them. It's probably number 3. This is a button. Let's see what this one does. So put that text in there and scroll back up so I can get to my run button. And when you go to search for stuff, just be explicit. Make sure you're very explicit about what it is. Oh, there we go. You can see that tooltip is all we have to do is put that text in there and it pops up. And obviously there's a lot of stuff this can do. It's going to be a lot to try to memorize all of it. So if you're explicit when you look for it, you'll often receive a little box like the little black box results on Google, where it knows exactly what you're looking for and gives you that exact answer instead of just websites that might have something related to that answer. So just make sure you're explicit in your searches. Another thing I don't think I've mentioned since I just talked about search bars, one of the tricks I like to use with searching for things, if I'm not quite sure, is I will misspell stuff on purpose. I will misspell it to see what Google tries to correct it to, and then that gives me an idea of other things. When you see what Google tries to correct it to, it gives an idea of things to look at. A numeric box, those are useful. I'll drink one of those over. So it's just like a text box. I'm not going to do anything with this except run it. We get the values the same way as the text box. The difference is we have the little buttons to go up and down, and we can only type numbers. Right? So with the cursor here, I could type 65, but I know you all can't see what I'm pushing here, but HGF, KLU, semicolon, comma, comma works, and a decimal works because those are part of numbers. Less than, greater than, plus, G, D, S, and it only accepts numbers. And we have the little wheel so we can scroll up and down with as well. And with that, there's going to be a lot of things in the properties value. In particular, these 3. Under data, the data of that box, how many decimal places, how many steps are you going to take when that little up or down arrows hit, maximum and minimum value. You probably want those if you're messing with the number box. Rich text box, you can adjust colors and everything and get much nicer looking output than just a simple text box. Tooltip, we saw those. Tree views are useful, but they're a little bit harder to work with. That's where this is the tree view, where we can collapse things and different things have like parent and child objects. So this is a tree. Here's a tree view. Okay, I can come over here and documents folder is all collapsed, but I can expand it and get to any of my other folders. So like schools. Oh, I guess there's not much in school stuff. There's something with Unity. So I can expand that, and I just deleted all the games that were on this computer to open up space. But if there were more, if there was more than just the Unity engine installed, we see all the games that are on here. But I just moved them to this online storage so that I have more space here. But that sort of expansion. Well, C drive would be good. So under C drive, I can expand program files, see what's installed here about Java. So like the JDK part, the particular libraries that are on there. And that's a tree view. They're very useful. They can be a little tricky to work with, but if you just do a search for one in Visual Studio, make sure you say in Visual Studio or with Visual Basic, you'd probably get a step-by-step if you wanted to include that for some reason or another. Web browser. This can be useful. We have to set up all the properties of it. We have to tell it what engine to use. Maybe. By default, it uses the old Internet Explorer Edge, or yeah, before Edge. Yeah, it looks like we'd have to set all that up. But what's on the little dot behind the pictures? Oh, that just gives us the option dock and container means it's going to take up the whole space. There's some setup for that, but you can make your own little browser window or browser and set all that up. But that's basically what you want to do here now. You know, we've seen all the concepts. We know how to put selection structures and loops into a method so that we can call it repeatedly and make stuff happen. You know how that part goes together, the scripting part. So you just want to just play around with the widgets and bring things in, use that IntelliSense to kind of predict see what is available, see what it tries to predict, and look at the icons. So like we looked at the wrench icon, and the wrench icon showed up in places where we would assign that. We would make an assignment to that value. Whereas the little cube box looking icon, that seemed to be showing up in places that it was going to do stuff, like refresh the text box, go back to the original default text. And so keep that in mind and try to, just mess around and figure it out it's an active subject. You're going to want to do it. And the more you do it, the better your understanding of it's going to be. But remember to scroll through the properties list, see what's there. And like we did, couldn't figure out how to get a tooltip going, so we just put that in Google, and it told us exactly how to do that. It only took a couple seconds. And yeah, just kind of play around with making forms. Think of a small example, or take some of the logic that we've done in programs we've already written this semester and put a nice little GUI on them. Let everything freeze up. Well, that's not good. It won't matter too much. I was about done anyway. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Nope.
Yeah, so obviously that's something you're going to want to sit down and do and just, kind of mess around with it. What's a recent program we did? Something that wouldn't be too bad. Well, that would require reading and writing files. Something like, I'm drawing a blank on programs we've written recently. The IT troubleshooting program was from like week 2 or something. Selection structures, where you're just asking a bunch of questions. See if you can transfer that over to GUI. You'd have to change the logic, but some of the stuff we've done, see if you can get it working behind a little interface and just kind of familiarize yourself with those buttons. As far as the homework this week, this kind of comes in 2 parts, right? Here at the end, we've seen all the different types of programming. So this week, the assignment is about planning. There's a big worksheet about how the GUI is going to look, what you're going to name the things, what some useful names on the front end are, what some useful names on the back end are, in the planning worksheet. And then next week, there's the assignment around it is like testing. So there's like benchmark tests and things to do with that. But really, you just want to jump in and do it. You just kind of start messing around with stuff and see what's available. use that IntelliSense to predict what it's going to do. And it looks like this done crashed on me. Oh wait, wrong task manager. Not that one. The one on this computer, which is actually open, isn't it?
Is it just this computer, or is it? Do you have a lot of issues with Visual Studio?
I'm not sure. Visual Studio is big software. While I was talking, I had a bunch of coffee right before class, so I might have just been tapping on the mouse button and clicked on too many things. Well, it looks like Visual Studio is only using 20% of the. Yeah, so nothing's maxed out. It doesn't even say doesn't even show it not responding. Oh, so it's only the form that is not responding. So most of Visual Studio is okay. So I apparently clicked on something on the form that messed something up. I think when I hit end task, it's probably going to close all of Visual Studio. Let's see. Yeah, it closed the whole thing. So it was something in that form that I was putting together. Oh yeah, I drug extra tooltips in. I might have like double clicked on the tooltip or something, and that's probably what happened. The tooltips it doesn't anticipate us double clicking on a tooltip, but when I did so, it might have tried to generate that click event for the tooltip and just got stuck, because that's something that probably shouldn't happen. That doesn't even make sense, right? The tips are things, what pops up whenever we hover over something to let us know what it is. Right? Like here, the tooltip is the start menu. That's definitely not something we set a click event to. So it was probably something I did, because it was the form that locked up. Oops, not that. Sign out. Then log out. But if there are no questions about that, that's pretty much what I wanted to look at tonight. That ergonomics thing, I always give that spiel in every class I teach, because if you're in this classroom, you're planning on having a nice, comfy desk job that pays a lot of money, right? Just keep in mind that desks are bad for our bodies. So you'll have to manually make that adjustment and use your body, do dynamic things with it so it doesn't wear out on you extra quick. And as far as Visual Studio, you're going to want to get in there and do something. Open up your homework from earlier this semester, transfer that logic from Python over to Visual Studio, which is just or from Python to Visual Basic, which is just slight syntax changes. And we saw the other day, the syntax isn't that different. It's just some different keywords, basically. And then put GUIs together and take some of those programs and put them make them the back end for a GUI, just to get used to that. And as always, I will be sitting here until I'm going to keep my lights on and the computer here in the gym until 10 o'clock, and just consider this lab time. So if you have any questions, let me know. Text messages and Ivy Learn messages make a noise on my phone, so I can jump back on Zoom in a couple of seconds time if you get stuck on anything while you're working on it. Any questions? Anything?
Nope, no questions from my end.
No.
All right. Well, y'all, just kind of mess around with that. Get familiar with it. It's very easy. After you get a couple things working, it's going to come more and more intuitive. And let me know if you have any trouble with it. It doesn't just have to be tonight. Anytime, if you got other stuff to do and you don't get around to the homework till tomorrow afternoon, and you get stuck on something, give me a call then. I'm always available to help. So y'all have a great night and great weekend, and I will see you next Monday.
Will do. See you next Monday.